Thanks for joining us today for Do-It-Yourself Coaching for your home improvement project. I am your host, Tom Osa, and I'm here with Frank DeToma, the founder of FJ Detoma Construction. We have a really great format for you today. Here's our agenda. I'm going to introduce Frank in a moment. A little bio of him and FJ Detoma Construction. Started back in the 80s and just a wealth of experience in so many different areas of home improvement. We're going to have a few polling questions, anonymous of course, for the audience, as well as a few topics that we'll discuss. Frank will bring this up, certain things that you could do around the home in order to improve your dwelling, and really easy projects, things that you can accomplish perhaps even through the course of an afternoon on a lazy Saturday or Sunday. Or if you're being asked to accomplish the honey-do list, and this is on one of the items, you're speaking with the right person, Frank DeToma. So without further ado, I'm happy to introduce my colleague and friend, Frank DeToma from FJ Detoma Construction. Take it away, Frank.
Okay, thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here. It's good to be doing a podcast. First podcast, my first official podcast. I'll try anything once. Anyway, so been in business licensed since 1987 in remodeling, a home improvement license in Rockland County. Grew up in the North Rockland area, town of Stony Point. Started in the construction trades when I was 16 and never looked back. Went to North Rockland High School. When you see me, I'm wearing red and white. That is the company colors, emblematic of my school and the area I come from. So we're a general contracting company. We had thousands of experiences, probably thousands of jobs over the last 40 years. Pride ourselves on quality work and a fair price, and being ethically and socially responsible. That is our commitment, and that is in fact why we're doing this podcast. We want to reach the population. We want to get our name out there. We want to be helpful. We want to point out some do-it-yourself type material and integrate with the public. So that is the overall. That is the overview of this. Further, I'm also a teacher at Rockland County BOCES. I teach construction trades. I have a master's degree, Master's of Science in Education. So there's been a blend. There's been a blend of different educational components and construction components. So our fundamental concept of being in business is, of course, part of it is profit, but to provide a good service, have a good reputation, and create a sense of wholeness with our employees, with myself and customers. So that is the general overview of my biography, and I will turn that back over to Tom. Thank you.
Okay, so a few disclaimers about the do-it-yourself projects that you're going to see today that Frank will explain. We put this together just to make sure that everybody's bottom line, safety first. So, Frank is a licensed professional with over 30 years of experience. Don't conduct projects until you are 100% sure you know what you're doing. Consult a licensed contractor before beginning your project, especially something that's technically complex. If there's any local zoning ordinances or anything that you have to get permits for, please check with your local town, village, or other. And again, safety first, safety first, safety first. Be careful. Just make sure all your ducks are in order before you begin any sort of home improvement project. So we're going to flip over to the next slide, and I'll turn it back over to you. We actually do have a few polling questions that we'd like to ask of the audience, and we're just going to launch that right now. So on your screen, you're going to see a series of 3 different questions. We'll start with the first one. And the question is, what do you need in order to start your home improvement project? All right, so let's take about 30 to 45 seconds to answer that. Okay, so the results were interesting. The question was, what do you need in order to start your home improvement project? And the answer, percentage was varied. 50% of you just flat out said guidance from an advisor. 25% of you said research on the internet. 12% of you said tools. 6% said materials, and a smattering said other. All right, so that's where we're at with the numbers. I'm going to move it to the next slide. And we'll have some other polling questions in a moment. And Frank, back to you about what you need at the beginning of each of the projects.
Okay. Before Tom, as you mentioned, safety is a priority. We have to mention that. That's a legal standpoint. Besides, it's a way of life. It's a practice. We don't just happen to be safe. We don't get struck safe. Safety is something learned, just as the skill and the craft of carpentry, contracting, electrical, plumbing. We integrate it into who we are. We start by practicing principles and methods that are going to keep us alive, keep us safe, and produce quality work. Sometimes one is very anxious to work with their hands and get involved in the process and complete a project because there's an excellent feeling at the result or completion of a project. However, we got to methodically approach things. And safety starts by thinking about it. Are we going to wear the right boots? Safety goggles, one set of eyes. Thousands of interactions happen when you're cutting wood and hammering nails. One piece could fly off or chip off and go into the eye. There could be a problem. So we emphasize the importance of safety goggles and work boots and having proper fitting clothing on, dust masks, things like that. Slow it down enough, particularly in the beginning, to build these disciplines or these habits. Okay, tape measure, almost, I use it all the time. It's clipped in my utility belt. If it's not there, it's on my, on my pants, clipped on. Reading a tape measure. Sometimes if we're not familiar, we don't use it often, we have to go back and relearn it, which is okay. In the carpentry field, the construction field, it is probably the most used tool. We want to think through in terms of list form. When we start a project, I learned with pen and paper, and I didn't always start that way. I used to do things on the fly. I'd go to get material. I'd have the stuff in my head, and I would forget things. So there was a great deal of inefficiency early on until I learned to be more methodical. So plan your project. Build in the proper tempo so that we get just as we're building a house, a strong foundation. We want that foundation to be there. If we start with the basics and we always have the basics, we never have to go back to them. Okay, Tom, thanks.
All right, so next slide. And we have our first topic is how to patch a hole in sheetrock.
How to patch a hole in sheetrock. Okay, so sheetrock is a conventional wall covering used in the United States and probably other countries. It is the most common used wall covering. It is also referred to as drywall. Sheetrock is a blend of paper. It has a paper coating on the outside with gypsum, which is a mineral that's mined in Nova Scotia and brought down and pressed in a factory between sheets of paper, creating that sheetrock. Sheetrock is fastened these days with screws to the framing, which are the studs. It's put on the ceilings. You usually start with the ceiling. We call them the lids, and then we go to the walls, and we work our way. It's counterintuitive because we start at the top and work our way down towards the floor. We screw it and we countersink the screws. Some of the typical material used with sheetrock is a roll of tape. Now, tape is something that covers the seams. We put the tape, it's not Scotch tape, it's not masking tape, it's not duct tape. It's essentially a roll of paper, or another kind of tape is a mesh. It's rolled A base coat of what you're looking at there, spackle or compound is laid. The tape is put into it. That is a base coat. When that dries, another coat is put over it, sanded. Another, maybe 24 hours goes by, another coat, typically 3 coats, sanded in between coats, so that at the completion of that project, you have finished walls where you don't see seams and defects, you don't see the screws, you don't see the nails. Now, sheetrock can be damaged fairly easily. People bang into it, people bump into it, furniture, things over time. Sometimes one will get angry and put their fist through it. How do you repair these things? It is important to learn how to repair it. There are some techniques out there that we could really format to the do-it-yourselfer and simplify as, I would say, a trade secret, but a shortcut that produces great results in how to patch and repair sheetrock. And we're going to develop that. We're talking about it now, but we're going to develop it further in another webinar. It's called a blowout patch. That is a simple, fairly simple way to fix damaged sheetrock. Well, you don't need years of training and professionalism to make some basic repairs. Keyhole saw, hawk, there are some certain tools we use. Again, the tape measure will come into use with sheetrock. Okay, Tom?
Yep. All right. Next slide. Backsplash.
Oh, putting up a backsplash. Now, typical kitchen has a backsplash. Backsplash can be made of tile, ceramic tile, could be made out of a metal tile, can be made from Formica. Backsplashes are, constructed from quartz, from stone. Typically, the most common is probably ceramic tile. I would say is the most common. All right, putting up a backsplash. So certain, customary materials, ceramic tiles, there's an adhesive that holds it on. There's a tile nipper, a tile saw, a trowel, some basic tools that can get a job done. Again, this is something a do-it-yourselfer or a home improvement person could, a neophyte to home improvement could work on and make headway with. The bottom line is, do a little research, watch some do-it-yourself videos, YouTubes, podcasts, take some instruction, stay safe. Again, emphasizing the tempo of the job, make a list, get to know what you need, and then proceed methodically. That to me is, I used to do things more erratically when I was younger in business, and I found out the results were just very inefficient. I like to think of things as a process and methodical. So first, we would put they call it mastic or the glue on the wall. The tiles would then be put on in a certain pattern. And then the last tiles that would need to be are usually put on, the ones that we need to cut are put on last. Again, so there's tile saws and there's nippers and there's ways to do it. That's something visually we want to show. So again, in the future, we will relate to that in a podcast and give a visual demonstration of that. Okay, Tom?
All right, head into the next slide.
Oh,
Fixing cabinet door hinges.
fixing door hinges. Okay, so there's this thing called gravity. And, cabinet doors have weight to them. And they open and close, kitchen cabinet doors or bathrooms or, laundry rooms. They open and close hundreds, if thousands of times. The hinge is the mechanism that opens and closes that door. So it is relied on to make mechanical operations flawless for thousands of operations. However, the weight of the door will sometimes strain the hinge and create a sag because all items have a tendency to want to return down to the earth. Over time, this is going to happen. What do we do about it? Cabinet door hinges typically have adjustments on them. There's hundreds of companies making so many different brands. But usually a hinge has a couple of adjustments and there's several ways to do it. We are able to take a Phillips head screwdriver or a straight head screwdriver and make the adjustment sometimes just by making a small turn of the screw. Other times we may have to reset the hinge. However, the point is that this is something a do-it-yourselfer could do, somebody in initial stages, early stages of home improvements, using proper advisory channels, podcasts, home improvement experts, YouTube. Those kind of resources can get someone in position to be able to make that change themselves, right? So that's, again, that is our general focus here. We want to bring it back down the road into more of a visual how-to. We're essentially announcing what's coming up, and we're going to show physically how to do these things. Okay, Tom, thanks.
Got it. Okay, so we have another polling question that we'd like to ask at this point. So if you just keep an eye on your screen, we're going to deploy that poll right now. And the question is, what part of your home are you planning to work on next? We're going to launch that poll now, and then we'll take about 45 seconds. There's a lot of choices, and you can choose multiple choice because, hey, why not work on multiple things? But one thing at a time, one thing at a time. All right, we're deploying now, and hang on just a moment, and we'll bring in those results. Wow, 50% of you mentioned that you're looking to update your kitchen. Very interesting. All right, you got another 12% for the bathroom, another 12% for the bedroom, 6% for the outdoor area, and then a smattering of 3% attic, 3% hallway. There's some for other and basement. So, but it looks like the kitchen is definitely a primary place that people are looking to update. So let's just go back one slide. These are the polling questions that we asked before. We'll have some more at a future webinar, but if you have any questions that you'd like to ask of Frank, now really is the time to do it. So Frank, we do have a few questions that came in. Let me just list them for you. So we have a question, and this was actually about our backyard in North Rockland. There's a gentleman that said, I grew up in North Rockland, and you mentioned about gypsum that comes from Nova Scotia. And he said, is there any connection with the U.S. gypsum plant, the one in Stony Point? Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, as far as I know, that plant, I believe, is closed. That was an operating plant for many, many years. That produced gypsum sheetrock. I grew up in the area. I used to go down to what was known as the seawall along the river. We would see freighters or cargo ships. I'm not quite sure what they were referred to. They would come in and they would dock there and offload the gypsum. It would go up a long conveyor belt that you can still see there. I love North Rockland history, brickyards, the whole thing. So if I get talking about this, it brings us back.
Yep.
And you know what? That conveyor is still there. The plant is stopped, but that was actually, I did a little work there as temporary work when I was a young man, and a very impressive operation that employed a lot of people in that Stony Point, Grassy Point area. But yes, that was a producer. There was a plant directly across the river, another company called Lafarge. They also make sheetrock. So any more details are not coming to mind, but it was a big producer of sheetrock. It was right in our neighborhood. That's where the stuff was being made.
Nice. Next question we have from an audience member. You mentioned about the ceramic tile for backsplashes. Do you have a preferred company or a particular company that you like to use that has some nice designs? Looking to find a place to start.
Well, there's so many. I mean, I really can't think of anything offhand in terms of the tile. There's one brand called Florida Tile. That's one. Florida Tile. a good tile. If you go to local, I guess home centers too, carry some good tile. The tile retailers in Rockland County, you know, I think during the next podcast, I will know whether I have clearance to name them and talk about them. People that I've dealt with over the years who provide excellent service in terms of selling and retailing or wholesaling the tile to us and the components that go along with them. And so when you go in there and buy, you're purchasing, say, the amount of tile you need for a backsplash, you give them the area, they are gonna make sure you have enough grout, enough mastic, and enough tile and enough insight as to how to do the job instead of just making a quick sale and you're out the door. Some of that personal level commitment from the smaller retailers, I happen to love. I pay for that service. We like to provide that service. I think we will discuss and develop more about that in the next podcast. Good question. Thank you.
Okay. You had a question, and I'll actually answer this do you have any recommendations for YouTube videos that I can view to check out as you recommended? And we're actually going to have some links that are associated with this video presentation. So you'll be able to see it on YouTube as well as on Facebook. And we'll add a few links to some really reliable components of information for those three topics. You know, the how to patch the hole in sheetrock, putting up a backsplash, and fixing the cabinet door hinges. So we'll have that for you once we load up this video. And then the final question that I got for Frank. So a person logged in and said, hearing your statement about gravity that affects the cabinet doors, is there an average time I should expect for cabinet doors to last? I am updating our kitchen.
I don't know. I guess it depends on, I don't know. I couldn't really give you a specific on that. It depends on the quality of the cabinet and the use, how often it's used. Again, like if a kitchen is used often and maybe there's kids pulling on them, hanging on, there's going to be more of a need for repair. If something is of a higher quality, and again, we could get into a point maybe later on, we could talk a little more about the details of what manufacturers I would recommend or what suppliers I would go to. It's some of the cabinet companies have warranties. However, everything under enough use is going to strain over time. And the reason the cabinet hinges are made with adjustments, screws, step screws on there, because they know it's going to happen. So there's there's play built in. There's a fail safe. There's a solution built right into the hinge because it is going to happen, and they know that. So I couldn't give a specific. It depends on use, depends on quality. However, our goal is to inform you, show you, discuss with you how to easily repair.
All right. Well, Frank, thank you for joining us today. You're a wealth of information. You see Frank's contact information on the screen. So you can visit Frank and his website at fjdetoma.com. Phone number is 845-893-9096. And I should note that Frank has a huge amount of information on the website. If you go over to the blog and the newsletter, you'll see a variety of different topics. One of the things that Frank focuses on over the last several years, is construction project management. So even if you have like an existing group of people that you're working with, but you just need guidance on a particular area, FJ Detoma Construction and Frank himself can come in and advise as needed. So just a really cool guy to begin with. Just my own personal thought on that. So. Well, Frank, thank you for joining us today, and let's try and do a few of these. This is pretty cool.
Sounds good. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right.